We have a very special guest on tonight, and frankly, words cannot describe this person in their entirety. Their whole being is frankly outstanding, and the fact that they don't see their art the way that me and Tom do is a little shocking, but it comes with the territory when you're an artist that really wants to improve, and this artist is no different. They have been improving not only their traditional art, but their digital art for a long, long time, and it shows immensely, especially when it comes to their very detailed work when it comes to anatomy. And I guess the big question that I always like to ask people, especially Joe Nuts, who we have in tonight, is, you know, where do you think all this self, critique comes from, especially when it comes to being an artist?
Um, Probably from the fact that I just drew this arm here and it sucked. So I have to
Damn.
self critique myself to make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just like because I'm trying to be like an intellectual colossus of stuff like anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly is my biggest interest in anatomy, and so I don't know. I guess it's just I never really thought like one day I was like, okay, I'm gonna be very self-critical whenever I draw something. I'm gonna like you know pick it all apart every single time and be like, oh man, this sucks. I need to get better. It just kind of is the great fact of me drawing is the fact that I'm very self-critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of artists can relate to that a lot. I mean, I think me and Tom are also self-critical, and I'll say this much: even in my younger years, I was even more so. I've kind of tried to lay off of that fact because it tends to be. I don't know if you've run into this, Joe, where you do a lot of art and you keep on making that art, but you never have like the courage to like. It's not even the courage. It's just like you tell yourself in your head, like, at least for me, that I could do this better. So maybe I'll just hold off on like starting a Twitter art today, or I'll hold off on like posting this video on YouTube, and I'll wait another week, month, year before I post a project on YouTube because it's just not. I don't feel good about this, but I think an issue with that is you tend to run into the thing where it's like you never show anyone your art, and you don't do this. I don't think, Joe, you don't do this. But I know a lot of people on this server. I'd have to wager that a fair amount of people on this server probably do want to post their art, but they just never do, and they just end up being like lookers on the internet, not necessarily creators.
Mm. Yeah, well, that's how it was like right at the beginning. I mean, I post a lot of the stuff here that I do,
Mm-hmm.
um, even when it doesn't really fit the demographic of the server. Still post it, but
Yeah, we try not to have too strict. Like I know that there is like a demographic, but it's not like a strict demographic. People
Yeah,
appreciate a lot of different kind of art.
and I think the simple fact of the matter, Tom, is that even though this Discord is called Horny Artists, it's a really broad
Yeah,
title, I think, and it definitely allows for people to just post the things that
I,
they make, and that's about it.
I've always said that the emphasis is on the art, not the horny.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
the thing that set us apart. Like when the server started, the reason it has like fucking 2,000 members is because every other not safe for work art server is it focuses on the not safe for work, and then there just happens to be artists there, and they're the source of the porn. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
this is it's an art server for artists to talk about art, but also we happen to draw fucking Isabel getting fucked in the ass by a giant bush
yeah,
dog.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I guess uh,
Or
another
Ruth,
weird
as the
kind of
case may be.
yeah. I guess another weird kind of like tangent to that. I kind of want to ask you, Joe, is because I've never really get to ask this from people who I haven't seen like hop on the server before me, because it tends to be that the people on this server were here long before I ever was. But you joined the server pretty recently, right?
Yeah, maybe like a year ago, I think.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
Was it a year ago?
Maybe
I could see
close.
that.
We'll be getting there.
Yeah. I guess my another side tangent to that is like, well, what was your kind of like outlook on like joining the server? Was it just like, it's a good place to post, or hey, maybe I'll talk to someone here?
I'm not really sure. I can't really put myself in the same headspace that I was in, but yeah, it was probably that. I probably drew some stuff, and it was like, well, what am I going to do with this? Find a place
Mm-hmm.
to put it. And so I just went and searched for a server, and that's how I came across.
Yeah, we got lucky. We got Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, that is like some outstanding luck that you came
What
across
was it?
this server.
Discord?
Yes, it was actually.
Dang. You know what? I count our blessings, Tom, because Joe is. I know I say this a lot, Joe, especially in the text channels, but you are definitely like a cut above the rest. You inspire me a lot to do art,
Yeah, me
and
too.
that's why I like having you on the podcast so we can like talk about stuff. And I guess because this is like your wheelhouse is anatomy, because you are just outstanding at it, like to the nth degree. Like anyone who's looked at like people who draw anatomy, Joe is like he's basically like the peak. He, it's like I don't even know how to say like, oh, there's probably room for improvement because it's out of my scope. Like that's how good Joe's anatomy truly is.
Yeah, it's the thing. It's
And
like there's always room for improvement. No one is truly perfect,
hmm
but I always feel bad when you post your stuff because I'm like, I can't give meaningful critique. It's so fucking good.
yeah, and so for me, Joe, when it comes to making anatomy, a lot of kind of resources that I use, and I think a lot of people, I think this is a kind of a good topic to get on so that people can kind of learn anatomy because it is like the building blocks for character design, I think, and it also helps with understanding how to simplify characters on top of that. But for me, anyone listening right now, my first anatomy books that I used were Stonehouse's Anatomy, which is very, very good. It's extremely detailed as well as like really well researched. It's just a really good tool and resource, and it doesn't cost that much for the physical book. You can look at the digital one too. And they're both great. And there's also another one that I use a lot. I gotta fucking look it up because I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But they're very handy. I don't know, Joe. What kind of resources do you use when you started to like study anatomy?
Well, when I started, it was either just Google Images
Mm-hmm.
or I have a book called Barrington Barber Anatomy for Artists, a complete guide to drawing a human body, which is all right. But I was forwarded a really good series of anatomy books by someone else on here,
Mm.
and they've been like crucial to my progress. And if I can just get them up, you can get them on Amazon. Sure, you could get the physical copies, but I got it on Kindle. So these books are they're pretty easy because you don't really need. You can just look at the pictures and it's laid out so that if you just draw it, you figured out the sort of simplified form for I don't know how to draw the way the forearm connects to the bicep.
I'm sorry, what
Mm.
are the books
But
called?
they're Morpho Anatomy for
That's
Artists.
the one. That's the other one I was gonna mention. Is Morpho is
I should look
extraordinarily
that up.
good.
I've
Yeah,
never used like any art
Yeah.
books. I haven't done that in so many years. I
you'll
gotta start doing that.
Yeah, to kind of go into it more, Tom. So, for the listeners, Morpho is an extremely good collection of books. And they just keep on making them, I think. And they're really handy because not only are like, if you do buy the physical book, which I always recommend buying the physical book because I just like having something to hold and look at,
Yeah, I'm the
and
same.
and
It motivates me a lot to read it too.
yeah, it also just helps because it's like, especially when you're doing like art like out and about, it's nice to be kind of unplugged, untethered from the world and not have to like look at technology. But that's just my viewpoint on that. But as far as like those books go, they're really handy because they're very they rely less on like the descriptions of like body parts as well as like like describing in detail like how they work and compared to like animals or other things like that, but they really just hone in on like the structure of them and how to not only like build up from like simple shapes but like make that anatomy from those simple shapes. And they teach you a lot of that, like not necessarily muscle memory, but the kind of like small building blocks you need for like slowly rendering muscles or just like anatomy in general. And I had no idea, Joe. That's really fascinating. Like you also you got into Morpho because those books I'll say are outstanding, and they don't only just do anatomy books. They also have like kind of clothes specific books, as well as just like a specific book on hands or a specific book on like feet, and they're all like they're not like massive books either. They're like maybe like 50 pages each, but like the whole like collection of them is like there's like a huge volume of like different ones that are like specified in very like different fields of like either the body or things that interact with the body. And for anyone who's just looking to get good at anatomy and just study some stuff, those are some really like, not only are they like cheap, but they're like really comprehensive for what they are. um
Hmm.
every good art teacher I've ever talked to has like gone through the roof, like explaining how like amazing Morpho books are. Um, yeah, so that's the selling point if you want to buy a
We'll have
cool
the
anatomy book.
we'll have an affiliate link in
No, we won't.
the description. We will. We literally will.
Probably should do that.
Yeah, of
I'm a
course.
bit on the lazy side when it comes to that stuff.
I'm pretty sure you just get a link.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe I'll try to do it through my Amazon since I already have like Prime and everything.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah.
A weird
I'll split
flex
all
that you have
the
Prime.
pennies.
I don't have Prime anymore.
Haha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but I
that's
think the best one. Sorry, you continue.
no. Go, Joe. Go.
I think the best one to start with is probably simplified forms,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
because then
definitely.
that, and then stuff that goes more into the muscle, skeleton, joint functions. And I got a couple there that's about like how to draw muscle, how to draw like skin.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the simplified forms is probably the best place to start.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it makes the most sense. Because you got to build off of you just got to build off of those books really when it comes down to it. Because it's like, yeah, you could learn how to draw clothes, but if you don't know what the body looks like underneath, knowing how to draw clothes
Mm-hmm.
isn't super handy.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It's like I learned all this stuff like very organically. I didn't use like books and shit. And drawing porn was definitely a big part of what made me good at drawing everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't particularly good at drawing until I started doing porn, and that was when I started like really skyrocketing.
Yeah, dude. I'll say this much: there's a lot of good resources on the internet. There's specifically a website that I gotta find the name of it because it's just really handy. Where it gives you a picture of a person, like basically nude, and
Mm-hmm.
you just draw that person, and
Oh yeah, you told me about this.
yeah, depending on like the settings you have on the website, you can either make it the picture stay for like 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, and then the moment it changes, it's like, well, not now on to the next one. And it's really handy for like increasing that just skill of being able to draw faster or being able to like be loose but also still like keep the form correct, which I think is really handy for artists because at the end of the day, the faster you can draw, and when I say the faster you can draw, the caveat is the faster you can draw accurately to stick in form with what you want to draw, the just better you will become at drawing, because it's like exponential growth of you're able to make more stuff, so ergo you just improve over time faster. It's really handy, and I think not a lot of people understand that when it comes to drawing.
By the way, Spark, we never synced.
Oh shit! Well, we can do that at the end.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, we'll just have to remember. Hopefully I can remember. Also, I have some weird tech that I can do to sync audio. Even though it's not ideal, it's a fucking headache, but it does work. But other than that, Tom and Joe, I guess another thing I kind of wanted to mention, just to like keep this gravy train rolling, is like your inspirations for art, Joe. I don't know if any of the viewers notice this, but when they go to look at your art, it's very, very heavily inspired by Sonic and other cool furry characters.
Yeah.
Is there is there like a specific reason? Like or do you just think they're cool?
I just always liked it since I was real little.
Okay.
Always been a big fan, but kind of had a bit of hiatus from playing any of the games at all for like good 10 years. So it's sort of like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing too good with this drawing here.
No, you're fine, Joe. Focus on the art, or that's what it's all about. But like,
yeah,
so
just,
have you played Sonic Mania? That's a good one.
I did, but I refunded it because I hated it.
Oh, what? Are you more of like a 3D Sonic fan, or like
I'm more of a 3D Sonic guy.
That makes sense.
I didn't like it. Couldn't even get past first level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was not the second level or something. It was the chemical plant one. I couldn't get past it because it's like,
yeah, that one is a bit tricky. So when it comes to like 3D Sonic, I guess my other biggest question is: have you ever played Sonic 06?
I haven't played it yet. I want to though.
Well, have you heard of the like fan remake that's being made?
Is there? No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
So the reason they're remaking it, the fans are rather, is because if you've ever played it, you would notice that the load times are a bit on the ridiculous side. And for the viewer who has never played Sonic 06 or even seen anything, the order of load times is this: you talk to an NPC for a quest, it then loads into a cutscene with that NPC, and you're probably thinking, "Oh, it's like a cool animate." No, it's not a cool animated cutscene. It's just the guy talking with a speech bubble. And then it loads again into the stage in which you do the quest. Or sometimes, which is very fun and quirky, it'll load into a second speech bubble of the guy talking, and then it will load into the quest. And then after you complete the quest, it loads into the talking to the guy bubble, being like, "Wow, you completed the quest," and then it will load back into the main hub world or whatever it is you were doing. And you're probably thinking, with your high-end PCs and stuff like that, oh, that's no big deal. Load times would be cut in half or 3 times. No, the problem's not it loading anything. That's just how long it takes. Like, it's mind-boggling because it's not even like it's optimized. It's beyond optimized. It's like it's the most strangest thing in the world. And so the fan remake is planning on doing away with all loading scenes. Because of how just ridiculously long they are. And if you've ever played it on the PS3, it was even worse optimized, so the load times were like twice as long. And as a child who's played Sonic 06 for the PS3, I can tell you, man, it's definitely a game of patience, which is something you don't want to hear about a Sonic game. But if you do like stick with it, it is a fun game. In theory. I really like the shadow level.
Is that the only problem with it?
There's like, yeah, of course. Well, so there's a lot of weird kind of other bugs that happen, but like those are kind of like run of the mill when it comes to like 3D Sonic games, I'll say.
I mean, if you've watched a full playthrough of the game, you see that there's horror. It is fucking
Yeah, I'll say this
broken.
much. Um, out of all the
You run up to a
campaigns,
box and then like you stop dead with like no animation, and then you
yeah,
like turn into a ball for a 1 frame, and then the box next to you explodes with like
yeah,
horrible, like Dark Souls 1 physics.
no, but Tom, it's
It's
good though because Sonic dates a female woman that's a
yeah,
princess,
feel human.
and they kiss. Um,
Spark,
that is real.
I fucked up in draw pile. I was like, I'm gonna try a different brush, and I clicked off, and wanted to go back to the brush I was on, and I have no idea what brush I was using or how to get back to it, and it was so
Damn.
good, and now it's gone
Uh,
forever.
oh well, that's what you get, Tom. Nothing lasts forever, especially when it comes to art.
I don't
Speaking
know.
of things,
I'm not having
y-
a good time with the drawing here. I'm really not doing too good.
don't be silly, Joe. No,
You are
don't.
doing good. It's so good. It's so fucking great.
Yeah, Joe,
You're
come
playing
on,
way too much.
come on, man. You haven't even been. Here's another thing. The viewers
Pixel.
watching them
Oh,
draw right now.
pressure sensitivity.
Tom,
No.
Tom's done digital art for a fair while now, but Joe has barely done digital art. Like, and yet he draws this good, and I think it's due into part because he's really good at traditional art. But like his digital art is like beyond good. And it's fascinating, really. Um, especially seeing Joe like you want to talk about that, Joe? Like transitioning from traditional to digital. Like, what were the kind of weird kind of caveats that happened with that?
Yeah, we can talk about that. It's like it's just learning. Well, here's the thing. I started trying to use Krita,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a whole bunch of problems there with the tracking and the pressure sensitivity isn't on. And I know everybody says, "Oh, you can just do it in settings," but the settings is absolutely gobbledygook, and I can't figure it out. So I just draw in draw pile. Whenever I draw digitally, it's always in draw pile because I figured it out. I know how to use
Mm-hmm.
it, even though it doesn't have any good brushes. It like I'll make it work.
Have you ever heard of a
But
little friend called Clip Studio Paint?
too expensive.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I
Um,
don't know. I don't really feel uh, like that. You know, far into doing digital to get into using something as hardcore as Clip Studio Paint.
mm-hmm.
But that is like
Actually, to
the
be honest, the reason it's the standard is because it's a very simple to use program, and it's pretty cheap, especially if you get the subscription model where it's like $6 a month.
Yeah, and if you don't like subscriptions, even
The
the
full purchase is
digital full
$100
purchase,
for like the full version.
yeah. Wait, and if you're
yeah.
lucky, like me, for any viewers looking to get into digital, it tends to be that those like physical like versions go on sale during Christmas time, where they're like 70% off, and that's super handy. And that's how I got started in digital art was simply because like, oh, CSP Pro
Also,
version is like $30. I was
now
like,
that I
oh,
think about
okay.
it, some tablets actually come with a CSP subscription.
Wait, really?
I think that I'm pretty sure that what are they called? What company makes Cintiqs? Wacom. I'm pretty sure
Wacom.
Wacom tablets come with Clip Studio Paint with a Clip Studio Paint license.
That's pretty handy. That makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, look into that, I guess. But I don't think Joe's gonna end up buying
Yeah,
a Cintiq anytime soon.
yeah, that's fair. I
Yeah.
wouldn't
Well,
either.
the other the other thing I had to get over was like
What's happening?
it's just not the way it feels because I'm drawing and I have been the whole time and I am right now just drawing on a touchscreen laptop. So it's at this angle. I wish I could just put the screen because it's a foldable laptop. I wish I could just put it all the way down flat, but then the tracking goes all crazy. It goes off up into the upper left-hand corner and it doesn't draw a line
That's
if
so
it goes
strange.
too low. So I have to keep it at like a specific angle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just uncomfortable. I've gotten used to it, but sometimes it's like I'll be drawing. I'm just like, man, I wish I could just draw flat like I do with paper.
I've never had that issue before. That's so jarring. Is that?
Probably because it's getting old. Slap time.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So
Well, I mean, for my money, I know Tom doesn't really like it, but I bought a Surface Pro 7 like 5 years ago now or something like that, and I still like it, and it's handy because it feels like the little stylus it has feels like a pencil, and it's got a rubber tip for resistance, and yeah, and it's got gyros in it, so when you flip it over, it just erases with the eraser end, so it just feels like you're drawing with an actual pencil. I know for Tom, he didn't really like it because there's a small latency issue, but that tends to only happen when you're like running a bunch of programs in the background. But yeah, you know,
When I used it,
options.
it was like a half a second of lag. It was
Yeah,
pretty bad, but maybe that's not usual.
that was because I was running OBS through it to like stream it to the
Yeah.
TV and stuff like that. So that's not like normal behavior, but yeah, you know, I'm sure there's ways I could probably optimize it better on like the tablet side and CSP side of things to be like, oh, you know, somehow refresh better. But
I
you
just
know,
spent half the podcast
options.
clicking around in pens.
That's fine. That's why we have Joe on. He's doing all the drawing for you,
Yeah.
Tom. You
He's
fucking
doing
hack
this great
fraud.
fucking Rouge drawing down there.
I know it's very nice. I very much like it. I guess I guess I don't know if any viewers have noticed yet, but Joe is he's a bit Australian, a bit like a tad bit.
Wait, what?
just a little.
Yeah, just a smidgen. If it wasn't for that like 10%, you would be not Australian, be American.
I'd be normal. I'd be a normal American.
Yeah, it'd be a
Typical
blood-redded American if you like came over here, got a visa, you know, lived with the people and understood our culture, and then became an American
Yeah,
citizen. I think that
there
would be
would be
cool.
some.
Is it true that your children ride in kangaroo pouches to school?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that,
100%.
Tom? That's
I
real.
just wanted to. I did know it. That's why I asked. I wanted to make
Oh,
sure.
okay, Tom. I was gonna because if you didn't knew that, I was gonna be really pissed off, and I was thinking we might end the podcast because I can't have a dunderhead be my co-host, you know.
Yeah,
So
I'd be a co-host.
maybe
It's so sad to hear about the drop bear like deaths every year.
to drop bear deaths.
Oh yeah, no, that's like one of the biggest causes of death in Australia is drop bears.
Well, speaking on Australia, is there any like weird things that happen as you be like growing up trying to be an artist in Australia that kind of like I don't know rustle your jimmies or just like change up like the normal flow of being an artist?
I don't know. Maybe the curriculum in school for art classes,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that there is one in the first place. I remember that was a thing that they changed even when I was in high school. I remember the difference in being in because how school works in Australia is you start with you go to kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start at year one, and then year one through to year six is primary school, and then year seven through to year 12 is high school, and then after that you can go to uni or TAFE or something. But I remember being in year 10 art, and there being like we couldn't actually draw or do or paint or whatever we wanted. We had to do the curriculum, what the curriculum said. We had projects. And then the year after that, the teacher comes into like, all right, there's no more curriculum. The school board has said, you know, we're not going to enforce. Well, there is a curriculum, but they're not enforcing it as much as they used to. That you do like 2 projects, and the rest of the years is you can come into art class and do whatever you want. Work on your own project.
That's great.
That's a pretty big shakeup.
And even the curriculum activities were like, you have a lot of choice. So I remember one of them was that we just had to write like something about an artist. We had to make a presentation about an artist, particular artist, and I don't remember who I did, but
I think
you could
it's
choose the artist. You could choose the way you presented it. You could choose, what you wanted to do, and then the rest of the time it was easy. The rest of the time you could just draw.
it's fascinating that they wanted you to like do research and I guess study an artist. I guess I don't know. I guess that's pretty normal, box standard artist stuff, maybe.
A
But
lot of like high school art classes and stuff will do that because they're like, well, we'll just use it to double as an art history class, even though there's different things.
Yeah, it's strange because I know Tom's and Tom. Have you like talked about your like art class experiences in high school?
Okay, I should say my elementary through high school art class experience was always pretty positive, except for the end of high school because the old teacher retired and we had to deal with some like new bitch that like enforced like now we're doing sculptures, and it was
Oh
like
shit!
great. Uh, but before that, like in high school, it was all very much do whatever you want. Like the guy who ran who like the teacher was like an old cartoonist, so like he got it. He understood. He was like really cool.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
What do you
So
work
big.
on?
I have to look into him. I
Oh.
don't know if he was like a big cartoonist. I don't know if he was like, oh, he created Spider Man or some shit, but he was a cartoonist. Um, whereas this new teacher was just some like bitch out of college. Um, but in as for when I was in college, that was when I hated my art classes because that was when you had to like take specific classes just for like points.
Yeah.
Uh, and so the two classes I did were a drawing class, which I thought I would love, and a 2D design class. 2D design was arts and crafts. It was glue black pieces of construction paper to white pieces of construction paper to make fun little pictures. And the teacher was never there on time. Um,
Well, they are an
and
artist, Tom. Artists are never on time.
sometimes our class would be canceled because the teacher was just like, I can't come in today.
That's horrifying.
And then the drawing class was also very fun. It was here's a bunch of random shit on a desk, like a gourd and a fucking teapot on a like blanket, and take out your charcoal and draw it, and that was every class. It was
That's
so exhilarating for someone who's going to school for animation, who wants to do character design and like cartoons. Yes, I would love to draw another fucking gourd. It was the most boring experience I'd ever
yeah.
had in my like artistic life.
And I think this is kind of an important subject to bring up, and I think we've talked about it maybe once before. But when it comes to like going to college, right, and specifically like going to college to do art, right, there's a lot of colleges out there, and you can do online stuff as well. And there's a lot of good resources on there. Like I think it's called like Winged Canvas. Those ladies out there, if you check out their YouTube channel, is like extraordinarily good when it comes to like digital art and all that stuff and concepts that kind of revolve around art. But to like hone in on like the real life aspect of like going to a college for art, I think a big thing a lot of people need to like realize and understand is if you want a degree, then yeah, you have to do all the bullshit classes for a silly little piece of paper that says you're like a liberal arts major or whatever. But if you want the experience and you could care less about listening to a fucking counselor tell you how you should be spending your money going to their college, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you to like spend as much money going to their college as possible because that's their job. Um, you should focus in on like, okay, what classes sound interesting? Is there a way for me to like preview these classes? And 9 times out of 10, the vast majority of colleges, if you like know the schedule, you can just walk in on a class and just like observe it. That's pretty bog standard when it comes to like college and stuff, especially if it's like a community college. And what I recommend to everyone is take the time out of your day instead of just being like, yeah, I guess I'll just like sign up for these classes online and then you go to them and it's like it turns out to be a really shitty experience. I think it's very handy if you just like take like a week or two out of your busy schedule and actually go to observe like what colleges you genuinely do want to go to, just to like not even improve your art, but like to get like the bog standard, like this is what terms mean in art that you couldn't necessarily look up because you didn't have anyone in your life that was very like, you know, artistically sound. And so I think for that aspect college is very important, but knowing like what specific classes are like worth going to is very important, especially important when it's like you don't want to become like loathful to the art you're making, right? You want to have fun making the art you're making, and if you end up like Tom where it's like you just waste a lot of your like college money on classes that you had no
Oh,
idea
yep.
were going to end up this bad, then
Here's
it's
the
like
thing I'll say.
oh yeah.
There are art schools that aren't colleges and only do art, and that's, first of all, that's how it should just work. But second of all, those are much better for like what we're doing. Go to, if
Yeah,
you have one
definitely.
of those in your area, go to that. Don't go to the fucking art school that's trying to rip you off.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, don't go to the college rather. Don't go to the
Yeah.
college. If you go to your college and you say I want to be an animator, or I want to make comics, or I want to be a character artist or a board artist or something like that, and they say, well, we have this wonderful graphic design class, fucking turn and run.
You know what, Tom? I think there's even a bigger
They're
problem
trying to
than just
suck your
that.
soul out.
I think the bigger problem is what you're doing is you're like you're limiting yourself by being like I can only go to this one college because it's the only one I can afford is a community college. Rather, what you should be doing is like you should really be, and this sounds so fucking nerdy and like up our own asses. Like this is the shit you would hear in high school where it's like the counselor comes in and it's like, you know, you should really be looking at scholarships and like doing all this stuff, and it's like they're not wrong. Like scholarships are very handy, and if you like take the steps to like learn how to get them, as well as take the steps to like do genuine research on the things that you will be doing for like a year of your life, let's say, right? Let's say you're going to spend a year of your life going to a college. Wouldn't you want to like take a week out of your day or just out of your life to be like, this is definitely the college I want to spend a year at, or this is the college I definitely want to, you know, do art in? Because if you don't do the research and then you get kind of pissy that like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting at all. It's like, well, what were your expectations to begin with when you kind of walked in and said, "Hey, do you have any art things?" It's like, no, you should be looking at colleges that only do art things instead of just going to like some random Joe who just wants you to spend money at their college, right?
Well, I think that most people, they don't. First of all, there's not many art colleges in general, and second of
Mm-hmm.
all, I think most people just think of a college as a college. It's just a college.
Yeah.
They don't think of it as being like, oh, this is an art college and that one's a this college and that one's a that college. To them, it's a college, and if they have like a program for what they want to do, then that's great.
Yeah, and I
Oh, I
don't.
finally found this brush I was using. I think it was the pen brush.
I just don't think that's like a good like philosophy to have, and
Well,
I
that's
know
not
a
even
lot
a
of people.
philosophy. It's just people don't know. There's nothing to
Yeah,
tell you that.
yeah, you know that is weird, huh? Like even in high school, I don't know if you've experienced this, Joe. If you've ever decided to like go to like uni, as they say, down under, but like going to college in America is very strange because what tends to happen is your counselor, which is like the person that's supposed to like help you plan out your life, and they're supposed to do that for like the 400 plus students that are trying to figure out what to do with their entire life, right? So it tends to be they're not exactly on their game when it comes to that kind of stuff. But needless to say, it tends to be that these like counselors kind of just lead you down a random ass path, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll do that, and like you
Well,
as like a naive like 18-year-old don't understand like things yet still.
I think that the way counselors probably are operating is like they have to deal with like thousands of kids,
Hmm.
literally often thousands of kids every year, uh, especially in larger school districts like mine, where it is genuinely like 1,000 people in a graduating class or more. Um, and they just end up probably having like rote pathways for people where it's like, okay, if they are artistic in some way, if they say that they're like they want to be an animator or an illustrator or something like that, point them here. If they say they want to be a doctor, point them there. If they say
Yeah.
they want to do this, point them there. And then the reality of it is that, if you want to be a doctor, it doesn't fucking matter where you go because you're a doctor. You can do anything. If you want to be a lawyer, same thing. If you want to be an accountant, same thing. If you want to be an
Hmm.
artist, though, that just spreads out so much. There's so many possible directions you could go with being an artist. There's so many different like things that all they
Yeah.
can do is just say go to this either graphic design or, well, there's this one college that has a wonderful animation section, and you go, wait, what, really? It has like a whole area just for animation? You look into it, oh, it's all 3D animation.
Hmm.
Okay, well, and nothing against 3D animation. I love 3D animation, but it's not my like field. It's not what I do, so I wouldn't go for that.
Yeah. What's your experience with that, Joe? If you've had any, I don't know what your do you want to like get higher education for art?
I would like to go to art school, but mainly just to meet like-minded people.
Mm.
Yes.
So I'm perfectly fine learning all of the stuff at home with the resources that I have, even though at the moment it doesn't really look like it because I'm doing a really terrible job.
Joe,
But
shush your mouth.
You say you're doing a terrible job learning like art.
no
You are doing
drawing
an
right now.
you're an outstanding job, but
You're doing
yeah.
so
So
good.
yeah, I don't know how many times we have to
But
sing your
anyway,
praises, Joe, but
I'll say like it's this is a little bit like fucking inspirational speaker TED talk moment, but like there's a difference between being highly self-critical and being like fucking self-hateful. Like you can be self-critical but still enjoy the work you're doing. I think that all your art, like, of course you can improve on it, but the art you're making is still amazing.
hmm. But
Thank
so
you.
yeah, same goes for me. But like yeah, Tom's had this experience of just being like, I just want to meet more artists, and
Yeah.
we've definitely tried to make our stride at doing that, like just without the reliance of like colleges. Like we did the artist meetup last year,
Hmm.
and that was fun. That was interesting. There's definitely a lot I want to improve on, like doing a meetup with artists. What's your kind of like? Uh, do you think there's like more ways, Joe, to like meet artists than just like, I guess I'll go to art school?
That's sort of what
So
I'm planning to do.
there was a little bit, it broke up a little bit there just then.
Oh yeah. So like, do you think there's like other ways to? My audio's my fucking internet's bad. Sorry guys. I'm gonna have to cut all of this. No. So
You're back now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're working.
All right. So what I was saying originally was, do you think there's like more avenues, Joe, than just like going to like spending money on a college to like meet other artists? Like, there's got to be, right?
There is, yeah, well, there definitely is. But I don't know what they
I
are.
mean,
I don't know. Maybe you could
I
go. I go down like local, like go to the local library and join some sort of
hmm.
art club. But it would be full of like painters. I'm not a painter.
See, exactly. That's the problem I have, where it's like there's all these art clubs in my area, and you look at them and it's like, oh, it's a bunch of 80-year-olds doing paint, like what are those called? Like painting parties, where it's like everyone paints the same
are they
picture,
just drinking
or it's a
wine?
bunch of or it's a bunch of
Yeah.
children like doing finger paintings. There's nothing that's like, oh, if you draw like cartoons and shit, come here. Other than like an anime
Yeah,
art class for like 5-year-olds.
That's so
yeah. And
strange.
I mean, like when I like drawing, and I've just gotten into it. Like seashells and
Yeah, I saw those. Those look
corals and
great.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but still, it's like I think it would be underappreciated because it's just like a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really
Something I noticed about those that was kind of fascinating was like, despite it being so different from what you usually draw, your art style was still like distinctly shining through. Like I could tell that was like a Joe drawing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
his line
I don't
weight is
know.
good.
It really is like the way you do line work is
Mm-hmm.
very identifiable,
Yeah,
Thank
it,
in
you.
my opinion at
You
least.
you guys are too kind.
we're not too kind. You're too not kind to yourself, Joe.
You're
Stop
too
beating up
good.
Joe. I'm gonna
No,
bully you,
yeah, no
Joe, to be
problem.
nicer to yourself with positive reinforcement. Um, Because, like, that's a thing I think we can talk about. I don't know if you want to get in on it, Joe, where it's just, like, talking about kind of the deep rooted hate. Not to sound fucking morose, right? But, like, uh, that's a word I looked up. But, like, when I was a kid growing up, the biggest thing that I noticed, and you don't really notice it as a kid until, like, someone points it out to you, is like, so I was growing up and I had what they described as dyslexia, and so I went to special classes. But on top of that, my mom, for whatever reason, like, paid for even more classes, so I was doing like late night tutelage to like improve uh my smartitude up. And like the biggest thing that happened that I experienced wasn't even like learning new stuff. It was more like I would always say something like when I got a problem wrong where I was like, don't worry, I'm just stupid. Or I'd say stuff like that constantly.
Hmm.
And like every time the like instructors would be like, we don't use that word. We don't say that. And I was like, and I got pissed off at them because I was like, what are you talking about? I know I'm stupid. I could say I'm stupid. There's nothing wrong with calling myself stupid. Like that, but that was my like stupid chat. See, I just did it there. That was me, my attitude at the time, being a child and having a not so good home life. I was telling myself like, as long as I don't say people are stupid, it's fine if I say that I'm stupid. But in truth be told, like doing that weird like self-negative talk to yourself is never like good ever.
Yeah.
um and I only learned that like recently, like when I was like out of like college, that I really like honed in on that like weird like like memory I had, and I was like, oh, that's why they didn't like the stupid word. It wasn't because it was like a curse word or nothing. It was because were mad at they weren't mad at me, but they were just like, they knew that like that weird negative reinforcement like does nothing for no one. Like it doesn't help
Hmm.
ever.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
even necessarily that it'll prevent you from getting better. It's more like it'll prevent you from enjoying the fruits of your labor when you do get better because you'll it's good to always have the mindset of wanting to get better forever, but it's the way you need to think of it is I'm fine now, I just want to be even better. You know, it's
mhm.
it's like you can be happy with what you're doing now while wanting to improve. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You can have your cake
I
and
don't
eat
know.
it
Maybe
too.
it's just I don't know. I haven't been like that recently. I think it's just
Yeah, I
that
noticed you're a
yeah,
lot better with it lately.
It's because you're
I'm like
surrounding yourself with good people like me and Tom. We're good people.
this is because I'm doing it for an audience.
Oh,
That's a
maybe.
lot of pressure. Yeah, because I mean, Tom, you just drawing stuff like crazy good. I mean, I don't even know how you do that.
I don't know how
Thank
he
you.
does it.
I don't know how I do it either.
I need to catch up, Tom, because I'm
It's not.
way behind you and Joe.
I'm really scratchy. I'm chicken scratching basically. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
I wouldn't even
really.
say that.
it's a
But
style.
you've got just such clean lines though, and I envy it.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
think the only difference really, Joe, is like you do say you do chicken scratch, but there's like a weird kind of like level to it, right? Where there's a difference between like doing chicken scratch and like really doing chicken scratch, where it's just like someone's constantly like squiggling. But for you, Joe, it's like you and Tom have definitely like the same thing going on, where it's like, yeah, maybe it looks scratchy every once in a while, but that's only because you guys know where your placing down your lines. Like it's very apparent that you don't have to like redo a
Yeah.
line like all the
I can
time.
see I can see exactly what you're talking about when you say your art is scratchy, but the thing is like it works for your style for some reason. I've seen it in a few artists where like their style has like an energy to it because of the way it's almost like all these strings are like all tying together and laying in place in just the right way to create like an image. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it just has like an energy to it. It's like electric.
Hmm.
It's very satisfying to look at.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
honestly, Joe, if that's like a weird concern you have about your art, where it's like things feel scratchy, there's like two ways to go about it, right? Where it's you try to do line art on top of your sketch art, so it's just like more rendering,
Hmm.
or you could kind of try Tom's wheelhouse, which is even harder to get into, which is something I've been working on like all the time. It's just hard to like really nail it, where it's you kind of just lay down maybe one or two lines and then you're just good. Like you know what that's going to be, especially when you see Tom's art, just like especially as he's drawing now, where it's just like his construction is very fascinating because it's so fast. It's just yeah, it's just something to look at. And I think a lot of people who actually watch the podcast, seeing Tom like build characters up will notice this too, where it's definitely a lot of his art is like very like fluid and liquidy when it comes to like just the motion of how he draws. And for you, Joe, from what I can tell, you have definitely like a similar feel going on, but it's a lot more not to use like fucking flowery words. It's just a lot more like sharp because you do a lot more like accurate anatomy, while Tom does a lot more like cartoony based anatomy, where it's
Hmm.
like simplifying the shape, so he doesn't have to rely on doing a bunch of like, as you would say, chicken scratch to like make like the form of the body. And when you're doing that really good anatomy like you do, Joe, it tends to be you have to do that just so that you can understand where everything is going. I think I don't think it's impossible, but I do think it's very hard to draw really good anatomy without having to rely on like some kind of weird like facet or like drawing a
Well,
box or something like that.
also
Yeah.
for really strong anatomy, like really highly detailed anatomy, the only two ways to do it are either chicken scratch or rendering, like with a lot of like basically painting. Otherwise, you'd need
Hmm.
to simplify it because you're just working with lines. By the way, Joe, I want to say I don't mean to like minimize your ambitions with my compliment. Like I don't mean to say like your style is so good you don't need to pursue like cleaner styles. I'm more so saying that like you should pursue the things you want. I had a conversation earlier where I mentioned like I want to do more colored pieces, and someone was like, "Well, your art isn't unfinished. Like your sketches look great." And I was just like, yeah, thank you, but also I still want to. I like my current art. I like my sketches. I just also want to do more colored pieces.
Hmm.
So I don't want to give off the impression that you shouldn't pursue these like cleaner things or like smoother styles that you're talking about that you want to do because your current stuff is good. I just want to let you know that you're like you don't need to do that to be better. You should do that just because you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem I'm having at the moment is I seem to have forgotten like proportions. It disappeared. And so I'm trying to work on that, but
Mhm.
it's like you've been talking me all up about my anatomy and everything. I can't even draw the hip region on this character, and it's very annoying.
don't
Like
don't beat yourself up, Joe.
with
You're
proportions, the
fine.
way I always do it is I draw like all the construction before I lay down any major lines.
Yeah.
And I know that I do very simple construction. Like before I start drawing like the body, I'll do something like this. And then I can
Mm.
tell like, okay, I already know what all the sizes are. I'm not gonna have to resize everything. That now I have the proportions, and I
Yeah,
can just go from there.
because you can keep everything within the
Yeah.
line. Like that makes sense, right? So, and I think a lot of artists don't realize this, but I know a lot of people like to start with the head because I don't know what forever reason, but I think a lot of artists are just good naturally at drawing like face shapes
Mhm.
because it's just like one of those things you always look at, especially when you're just like in the real world, just talking to people. Like you can understand how to construct a face because you just see it all the time in your
Faces are
life.
just the most fun part to draw.
And that too, they have a lot of expression, and they have a lot of expression without having to do much, if that makes sense.
I've always loved
But
drawing faces because you can be so. I'll say this after you go.
yeah, well, I was just gonna just a simple point is like I think a lot of artists who do want to learn like the full brunt of anatomy and just like understand like proportions correctly, I would recommend to people to focus on drawing like the center of the body and then working your way out rather than like kind of like starting at a specific point like the head or like maybe starting at the hips could be fun, but you know, for stuff like that it's very important to like understand that, you know, yeah, it's fun to do the fun stuff first, but I think if you really want to hone in at like improving everything, then maybe you should start off with a little bit more difficult stuff, and then if you get frustrated, then that's when you kind of move to doing the more fun stuff that you're kind of familiar with, and then maybe try going back and working on the things you're having a little bit of a, you know, trouble with.
Well, the reason that people start with the head, it's like it's not because. All right, so when you say people starting with the head, do you mean starting with detailing or starting from like all the way in the construction phase?
I'll say this much. I think it sometimes happens where they start doing the detail for the head I think this is only for like
I do
like
this.
for very new artists where they start just rendering the head first and like they don't
No,
even
I
worry
do
about the
that.
proportion. Oh,
I
okay.
still do that.
Uh,
But
that's fine
I
though.
can fix it by just resizing because I have a pretty simplistic style. I can just resize the head.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Yeah. Joe, no. Oh, there it goes
Well, it's preserved forever in the
in the history
video.
books.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's not.
it's not on, but
Yeah,
I guess yeah, anime is weird like that. Sometimes it just isn't. That's specifically a weird thing I run into with animations a lot. And an interesting thing I'll say is when, because Tom, I know you were talking about like wanting to get into color. I had the same issue you had, Tom, where it's like I can't be bothered to color this thing because like I just like black and white. That was my excuse when I was a young lad. I was like, I just
Mm-hmm.
like black and white. It's a cool aesthetic. I'd rather have things black and white and like
hold on.
gradients and shit.
I'll
But
be back in a second.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
But like when I'm transitioned to wanting to learn how to animate, and then I did my whole weird holy crusade of just like using a 3ds, um especially with the flip note on like the 3ds side of things, you get a not a huge color palette, but you do get those like, you know, the good old fashioned reds, blues, yellows, and greens. And if you're looking to like add color, it's like it's not the hardest thing in the world to add in Flipnote. And then you start to like realize how to make other colors with it. And I think I've talked about this before, but it really broke me out of my weird rut of just being like, no, I'm not going to color anything, because it's like it's actually fun to color stuff in the 3ds Flipnote, because not only does like the coloring add a weird depth, especially when you turn on like the cool 3D feature, but it's just like handy. Um, Learning how to make colors like traditionally,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun, and I think more people should kind of have fun mixing colors together and seeing what kind of
I,
weird things they get out.
I had a very similar thing happen when I was younger. When I was like pretty early in my like learning art. Like I've always drawn. Like literally since I was a baby, I've drawn. But I started taking it seriously kind of around the end of high school. Uh, and in that era, I remember for years I had been like, I don't really like the anime art style. I don't really like drawing. I like drawing cartoonier art styles. Uh, Telling myself that, but then I watched I think Gurren Lagann, and that inspired me to like try those kind of anime styles. And instantly, I was having so much fun drawing these like weird anime characters and stuff. And I was doing really well too. Like for the time, I'm sure if I dug the pictures up, they wouldn't look good compared to my current stuff. But like
Mm-hmm.
for where I was at in my growth as an artist, it was like disproportionately good. Uh, and it was that moment where I realized, like, oh, I didn't dislike the anime art style. I was telling myself I didn't like it because I was bad at it and hadn't learned how to do it properly.
Yeah,
Uh,
that happens a lot.
and that was a really big developmental part in my life where I realized I just like doing. I think that it's good to just do all art styles, not be like
Mm-hmm.
this is my art style and I only draw like this. Just be like, no, just fuck it, just draw anything, draw whatever you
Yeah,
want at the moment.
that's
Your
my
art
biggest
On
thing.
style.
the back.
I
Hey,
welcome back. I was just talking about art styles and how like to me, I don't think it's good. A lot of new artists will say, "I'm trying to develop my art style." They'll say like, "I'm trying to figure out what my art style is," and I always say like, "Don't do that. Don't try to figure out what your art style is. Don't put that strain on yourself. Just draw thoughtlessly. Draw every art style. If you see a cartoon you think looks good, draw like that. Then if you see an anime you think looks good, draw like that." And just do everything. And then your art style will just be how you draw when you're not thinking about how to draw. If you're not putting any thought into like how should I make this look, uh, and you're just drawing like a raw idea, that's your art style.
mm-hmm.
And that'll make you a much more well-rounded artist because you're practicing so much different shit instead of just like the one thing.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem, Tom. Was that's the exact way I always think, no matter like any day of the week, right? Like it was so bad, like when I was learning digital art, that I got obsessed with like, well, what's the correct size for a canvas? And but now, like now that I'm older and more wiser, and especially I think this will sound weird, but I think the thing that also helped me with like breaking that weird cycle was doing art on a 3DS, because you break the habit of you break the habit of feeling bogged down by all the options, like that decision paralysis you run into. And when you work in a limited software like that, it really helps with just like understanding the basics. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Joe, you kind of understand that, right? Because like you're working in this art program right now that, for all intents and purposes, even though it has like a fair amount of brushes and like cool things you can do with it, is a pretty simple digital art program. Like the only thing that's more simpler than the one you're using now is fucking, not Photoshop, fucking what is it, Paint, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft
Yeah.
Paint. And
Which
even then
I,
they introduced layers in Microsoft Paint.
I'll
That's a big
say
update.
fully suck and I'll never use them because they can't do basic layer features.
Yeah.
But I will say MS Paint is a really fun program to draw in. I really like doodling in MS Paint. The newer versions have a
Hmm.
weird lag to the pen, but if you get MS Paint Classic, it's like a download you can get on like fucking Google. That version of it is just wonderful. It feels so nice to just doodle in.
Yeah. Get those crispy pixel lines
Yeah,
with your pixel brushes.
super crisp.
Hmm.
No latency whatsoever. No smoothing. It's like drawing on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. And I think that's a pretty good like handy thing to just keep in mind, like if you're trying to do anything new in art, is like you don't need all the fancy new fucking baubles and tinctures and things that cost money. If you just work with what you got first and you just learn the basics, then you're well on your way to just improving at the skill.
I'll say
Yeah.
the reason that I'm good at art today is because I did so much. Like I always say not to commit to traditional or digital. You should do both. But I do think that part of the reason I'm so good at art today is because I spent so many years only doing traditional, which is
Hmm.
why not only like only doing traditional, but most of my early art was like in the margins of notebooks or on the backs of worksheets and things like that, where
Yeah,
it just doodling
that good
and like
stuff.
doodling so much is what made me teach myself how to like really clean things up and make it work very quickly.
Hmm. I'll say this much.
Especially weirdly
Yeah.
enough, like I would have weird little things where I had a teacher I like liked. I was like, this teacher fucking cares about their job and is a really good teacher. So like I would try to draw something like good on the back of like a test or something
Hmm.
because I cared about like if they liked it, and to do that at the end of a test, you have like 5 minutes. You have to do it quickly.
Or you could study for the test, Tom. Not for nothing.
What do you? What? What does that
Get
mean?
better at the test taking, dude. Get faster at test taking so you can do more art.
I suppose so.
Yeah, there's different solutions for every problem. Think about that,
Or I
viewer.
could like get up on the table and shit on the test.
That's art.
That's avant-garde.
Have we ever talked about that? That one fucking artist in like what was it, Ireland or something? That was like so beloved that he got pissed off that everyone loved his art, so he just took a shit in a box. And then everyone was like, "This is art. This is amazing." And then he just like he fucking threw up his hands and was like, well, "Fuck this."
You got fed up with the art scene.
Yeah, that was early days of human civilization, or late days. I don't know. It's all relative. Yeah, it's weird. Art's weird. I was gonna say though, to go in on that, I think a lot of good artists who transition to digital art tend to be good at traditional art. And for everyone listening in who's a youngin', a wee lad, maybe going into high school, which you shouldn't be listening to this podcast, first off. But second off, if you're not like trying to like just draw fun stuff or just draw things in general, and then it gets to the point where like all of the drawings you've been saving like fill up like a kind of like a bin liner or a tote of like just a big old mass of papers and sheets and like weird tests that you drew on, then maybe look into drawing a little bit more. Because every time I visit another artist, it's always like the same reaction where it's like, oh my god, you have like a plastic bin filled with all of your like sketch pads when you were like a child, and it's like it's filled with like weird FNAF art or like other things like that.
Next time you're over here, I'm sad we didn't get to do it last time. Next time you're up here, I definitely want to show you all my sketchbooks from like I have all of
That'd
them.
be great.
Giant boxes of sketchbooks.
I'm so heartbroken because like I moved around a lot as a kid, so all of that shit just kind of gets thrown to the wayside because it's not seen as important. So I never had that experience of just like being able to hoard just about every like drawing I've ever done. But there's like moments where I find like caches of like art that I've made. Like, does that make sense? So like, because what would happen is I would make art either for my dad or for my mom or something like that, and when you move around, it kind of gets like just weirdly shuffled about and you can't find it anymore. But like every time I like, go to my dad's house for like visiting and stuff like that, and I'm just like helping him clean out places, I'll find like this like vanilla envelope of like all this like art that I've done. I'm like, oh my god, there's this. He has this, and it's like an old art project I did when I was like in like grade school, and it's like a pamphlet I made of like a Viking culture, and it has like Leif Erikson like hand drawn and stuff. I'm like, this is so cool. I can't believe he held on to this. Yeah,
that's great.
I love that stuff.
It's always great when you find something super old, like when from you were like an actual child.
Mm-hmm. I remember that reminds me, Tom. I had this amazing experience in like even though like I was in a special class, of course, and in middle school I was in a special class. For high school, actually, I wasn't for a little while, but in my special class for fucking the middle school, which is like 6th through 8th grade, I was tasked with like, oh, you got to write a news article, but like write a news article just meant like putting it in, MLA format. And I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it look like a real ass news strip. So I went out of my way to like make like this insane like digital piece using like, because you could do this in fucking Google Docs or whatever the fuck it was called, where you were able to like make shapes and like rectangles and draw stuff by hand. And so I just made like a real ass looking newspaper using like weird shit, just like give it like that real like newspaper look. And I did that
because you didn't follow the rubric.
No, I didn't get failed because it's a special class and you don't get graded in that shit because it doesn't transfer over to anything. It's like you're already in the slow class. How's failing it gonna like it doesn't matter. So I was like, I just treated all my special classes like fuck off classes. So that was like my time to shine when it came to like doing like creative shit. So that was my experience in the education system. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing stuff like that, even though it was like out of pocket.
Yo, like, when did you start doing, like, when did you, like, realize art was, like, a thing you wanted to do? Like,
I
more than
never
just, like, for fun?
I never realized it as like I think I still haven't realized it, Tom, honestly. Like this is gonna sound like bad shit crazy, Tom, but like even though I do art like regularly, like it's like an active thing in my life, and I've been doing it for so long, it's like I haven't had that like coming to like a terms moment like I've had with carpentry, right? So like with carpentry, I had this like big grandiose like revelation in like high school when I was building houses, and I realized like the work that I was doing was like this is a real ass house. Like this is something that someone's gonna live in, and like it's efficient, and like it's just a good place to live. And I haven't had that experience with art yet, but I'll say this much, Tom. It's gonna sound weird, but this podcast is like the the closest thing I've had to that weird experience, like that weird like glow in your heart
Yeah.
feeling where it's like this means something to someone. Like it, and not only that, but like I'm sure a lot of people can tell with just what we've been doing, you know, kind of like shaking up what it means to have a podcast, like with all of our visual elements. But when I was working on that stuff, I was just like, no one's gonna look at this. I'm just gonna have fun making like a 3D background in Blender, and I'm gonna do all this cool rendering shit just for me. And then to have people actually like not only listen to the podcast but watch it and be like, this is really cool. I've never really seen anyone do stuff like this. I really love how the way you made the like canvas like animate with Tom's like drawings that he does. And I'm like that gives me that weird glow feeling where I'm like, this doesn't just mean
Yeah.
something to me, like it means something to someone else. And I think I'm at the like precipice right now, Tom, where I'm like, oh, my art does have impact. I just never really noticed it because I've never had really anyone telling me that. I think Joe's had that similar experience in this Discord server as well as just us kind of praising him, right?
Yeah.
I'd hope so.
Joe,
But
are you there?
he's there.
Yes, yeah.
It's
Okay.
gotta be.
So I had to make sure.
But I'm not really. I don't know if
I
I don't
guess.
think I'll keep drawing.
Mm-hmm. But
I
wait,
guess.
in like in life
No. I think he means in
or
the
in
drop
drop
pile.
island? Okay, I almost had a heart attack, Joe. Almost gave me a heart attack.
I guess like a better way to phrase my question is, at what point in your life did drawing stop being just a thing you were doing with your hands and like have intentionality behind it? You were like, this is something I enjoy doing. Like, I don't know, like you do it instead of playing a video game or something. Because I know that early on, when I was like really little,
Mm-hmm.
it was just a thing to do with my hands. It was like a creative outlet, of course, but it wasn't something I thought about as distinct from any other creative outlet. Whereas after a certain point in like high school, I realized like this is something I really like to do.
You know what's weird, Tom? I've had like the inverse effect. Like when I was a kid, it was just something that just came naturally to me. But like as I've gotten older, it's just weird because like I had this when you like run into the experiences I've had where it's like you use art for industry's sake, right? For like drawing blueprints and stuff. It kind of warps your perspective rather on like what your art means, because then it becomes, oh, it's not like it can't be creative. It has to be on point, like it has to be this length so the next person looking at it can understand it like it's the written word, like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a weird stress that comes with doing like blueprint design and being able to you know not only show intention but like show accuracy with intention. And it's like the equivalent of like fucking MLA format for art
Yeah.
where it's like you have to stick within these like confines, and it's not even like it's a cool like creative thing that like keeps you on your toes. It's more like, oh, you have to do this so that other people can understand what you're doing, and that's the only reason for it. Um, and I think my mind has always been warped by
Yeah.
that. to some extent, and I don't know how I'm gonna break that funk.
It's funny because I've always been so much the opposite, to the extent that like I don't even like doing reference sheets of my characters. When people ask for reference, I just send them like
hmm
a bunch of drawings of the character.
I think that's
Your
why I
stuff is
love
looking really good.
animation.
You just gotta vibe with it, Joe.
Yeah. It's okay, Joe. You don't have to draw on the podcast. I don't. I
I
don't
mean,
want to force anyone.
most of our guests don't draw like
Yeah, some
during
of
the
our
podcast.
guests don't even
Yeah.
do traditional art. Sometimes some of them do like 3D
Mm.
stuff. It's all about the variety, you know.
But yeah, like you also, this is kind of what I mean by like you have to chill out and just fucking this drawing didn't come out that good. Oh well, I'll finish it,
hmm
draw the body, draw the arms and legs or whatever, make something good out of it, and then move on
Yeah,
to the next one. It's no big deal. It's just a one drawing out of hundreds, thousands of drawings.
yeah. I think.
You know what? That's something. This is something really quick. I want to say like this is something that has helped with the way I think about my art. I keep a folder on my phone where I will save just any drawing I do, anything that I've drawn goes in
hmm
that folder. Any picture, it doesn't matter what it is. I started it in like 2017, I think. Um, and underneath it says the name of the folder, and then it says the number of pictures that are in it. And now it is at 11,516 drawings,
Jesus
and
Christ, Tom.
that helps me be like, I draw like fucking 20 things a day.
hmm
Not all of them need to be masterpieces. It doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
like I want it to all be good, of course. Like I don't want some of them to be bad, but if some of them are, it's like, who cares?
yeah.
I'll just make the next drawing better instead. It's a good mindset to not like bog yourself down and freak out about stuff.
hmm Well, I think. I don't know, Joe. Is there anything you want to kind of like? I know you're talking about working a on some more serious kind of topics when it comes to art. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about that um, to kind of wrap us up at the end here.
Um. Well, I have an idea. I don't have a story yet. That's something I
hmm
have to work on. Is the story, but I have an idea, and it's it, it probably, I'm gonna be honest, it probably won't work out because I just don't think I have the technical skill to do the sort of thing that I have in my head.
Like the
But
layout work.
yeah,
Okay.
but
Well,
it's
I'll say this much, Joe. When it comes to like big storytelling stuff, it's important to realize that like no one writes a book in a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta kind of have like small arcs, small little goals within like the bigger grand goal of being like, I have this full like 50-page comics. Like, well, if you have a 50-page comic, that means you need to at least spend like at the most a day doing each like page of it, and that's a tall order for some people because doing that much drawing and rendering and coloring and writing can really bog down the production, right?
Are you comfortable talking at all about what the idea is, or do you want to keep your cards to your chest still?
Yeah, because we get that.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
I don't know. I don't want to say too much, and it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen.
That's fair.
That's totally fair. I mean, me and Tom do that a lot. I know Soam does that a lot, a lot. It's I'll say this much when it comes to that kind of stuff, because I know it can kind of sometimes feel like a cop out when you're just like a listener, being like, "Oh man, I just wanted to hear what cool stuff they were talking about." But it's really important, I think, when it comes to art, that you don't reveal anything too soon, because what can tend to happen, and this is like a real like psychology thing, is if you like say you're doing something or going to do something, your mind like automatically kind of rewards you with like, yay, you did it, or you kind of did it. And it's kind of the same thing when it comes to like doing line art and then being like, I'm not going to render this. It's the same thing where it's like you post the line art and they're like, in your mind, it's like, yay, you did it, you posted art. And then it's like, well, what incentive do I have to render it now? People have already seen it, right?
That's why,
And,
I don't know if you've noticed me doing this in chats a lot more lately, but like, whenever I have a really good art idea that's like really creative that I want to draw, what I'll say in the chat is, I just had a really good idea. Usually we'll like be talking about a character or something, and then I'll go, I had a really good idea to do with this character. I'm not gonna say what it is because I want to draw it later. Because I just know
mm-hmm.
myself. I know if I say what the idea is, I'll get the little dopamine hit of like, okay, I've gotten the idea out, so now I don't need to draw it.
Yeah,
Or
it's the
not
same
even
thing.
that, but also like, it won't have the same. A lot of time I will draw, but then I have the self consciousness of like, this won't have the same impact because I've already told people what it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think if there's anything we can parse out to the listener at home, it's, you know, keep to yourself, draw art, and when it's finished, have fun posting it, but don't allow yourself to like be like over encumbered by like needing to get good, as gamers say, because I think the really big thing that a lot of artists need to do is just like not necessarily get better at art, but get better at understanding what your art is in comparison to others, and then being able to have the confidence to then show it off, right? Because I think that's a big problem. I think the vast majority of just people in the world have, where it's just, hey, maybe today's the day that I do post it. Maybe today's the day I do make that, like, I stop creating these weird barriers of like, oh, I don't have a Twitter, I can't post art. It's like, well, you don't need a Twitter to post art. You could put your art on Pinterest, or you could put your art on fucking Discord or anywhere, or just show it to a friend. That's how I started. I'll say this much: if you do need like a way to like transition your mindset, is I say talk to a friend that you really care about, and that for a fact will understand where you're coming from, and be like, hey, this is the art that I make, and then they'll give you the genuine views that they have. And if you can't handle that, then try to build up that weird courage, or that self-confidence, because it's really key when it comes to making it big, I'll say. And if you don't believe me, that's fine, but what you should believe is this: if you don't do that kind of stuff, if you don't like say this is me making my art, then someone else will just come along and either steal it, or even worse, you'll be like working for someone else, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but then you just won't get that kind of recognition, and you'll always have that weird kind of pit stomach feeling of like, I don't know if this is good enough, and I don't think that's healthy for the most part. I think it's always good to critique, but never to, tell yourself off.